You know, if there's one right that you want to keep intact all of the time, but especially during a natural disaster, that is the right to own and carry your firearm. But that's exactly the right that was stripped away from residents of the city of Okeechobee last week, right before Hurricane Helene made landfall. Now, of course, I'm going to talk about what happened and some of the repercussions, but also something I found out about Florida and other similar states that could pose a similar problem in the future for gun owners as well. And I also want to talk about why it's so important to have these rights intact during a natural disaster. So, of course, I want to hear if you guys have ever been through this. If you're a resident of the city of Okeechobee, let me know what you think about this down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. Let's go and get into it. You know, preparation for hurricanes is so freaking important, and Florida is no stranger to this, right? At least a couple of times a year, somewhere in that state is going to get hit with a hurricane. And one of the things they do in preparation of the storm is declare these emergency declarations. Now, of course, these happen on state and local levels, and it allows them to get federal assistance if needed and help and aid in recovery after the storm. Well, one of these emergency declarations was actually 870.044, which states it would be unlawful for anybody in the city of Okeechobee to sell or possess ammunition, firearms, and you also could not carry those firearms in the city. Now, if you're having flashbacks of Katrina, so am I, right? Now, Katrina is like the most widely known gun confiscation that's ever happened in America, right? And I actually just talked about this in a video just a couple of days ago, so I'll kind of let that video stand on its own. But it is a stark reminder of what exactly can happen and how your rights can be stripped from you. But it's not the only example, and of course I want to talk about a couple more here in a minute. But still, sounds very familiar. Now, in 2006, the Disaster Recovery Personal Protection Act actually outlawed jurisdictions being able to seize firearms from their citizens. And at the bottom of 870.044, it says exactly that. Nowhere in this declaration should it be misconstrued that we're able to seize firearms from lawful gun owners. But the fact still remains, if you can't carry your firearm or own or possess ammunition during a natural disaster, that poses a problem, especially when we know how much of a problem looting is during these storms. Some people get really, really desperate. And like we've seen, unfortunately, in places like Western North Carolina, you are cut off from everybody. This isn't something that happens often, right? Where people are just cut off. They have no access to 911 services, nothing, right? And it's been over a week at this point since the hurricane actually struck, and there's still hundreds of people missing, right? It's presumed and hopefully that they are alive and well. They just don't have a way to reach anybody. If there's any other proof that you need that you are your own protection and you should take it that seriously, now should be the time. You should look to those poor people that are in, and I don't mean poor in a sense of monetary value, but just the fact that they are cut off, roads are destroyed, and all of that. That's what I'm talking about, because it's an absolute disaster, right? So those people have to fend for themselves. And this is an important right that has to stay intact all of the time, but especially during a natural disaster when you have criminals, of course, that will take advantage of you. And there's maybe times where you're cut off from the outside world altogether. The statute they meant to put in place was actually 870.043, because 870.044 actually deals with riots and unlawful gatherings. Now, the city of Okeechobee and Chief of Police Donald Hagan responded very quickly, relatively quickly. Within 12 hours, that emergency declaration was removed, and of course they offered plenty of apologies to go around. Actually, the GOA went down there and questioned the mayor and the chief of police to see what happened. And Donald Hagan, chief of police, said, you know, bills were coming across his desk and he didn't proofread that one. And he just signed off on it. And he wanted people to know how extremely sorry he was. You know, even Ron DeSantis got in on it and saying, hey, this is not how we do things down in Florida. When it comes to Second Amendment rights, you know, we make sure that we protect those.
And I would say it's probably here. You loot, we shoot.
So from what it looks like and what I can gather, it was an innocent mistake. But let's say this happens somewhere where the chief of police or the mayor is not so willing to reverse course. Maybe they get a handful of complaints from people, or maybe the GOA or FPC or somebody steps in and they say, yeah, I'm going to see if I can get away with this. Maybe they have a governor that's not so willing to actually reverse course on this. Kind of opens up your eyes to just how quickly, with a stroke of a pen, they can say, hey, this is the new law. Now, of course, this happened in a place that is very pro-gun, right? Not only in that county, but in that state as a whole. And to be honest, anywhere in the South, I imagine that most people would read that sign and kind of chuckle and go on about their day. They probably wouldn't be paying much attention to it anyways.
But I'm funny how? I mean, funny like I'm a clown, I amuse you?
Which is one of the reasons why I'll probably never move away from the South, because that's how we roll down here. Regardless, it still is a scary proposition to know that just a simple mistake sometimes can strip away rights. Now, fortunately, they backtracked very quickly. But what about this 870.044? Because that clearly says that, at a time of rioting, looting, right, civil unrest, unlawful gatherings, that you can't own or possess ammunition, right? You can't carry your firearm. Well, this may be a time when you actually need to have that. I talked about this a couple months ago with the riots in Minneapolis, right, in 2020, and Tim Walz's botched response to that, and how National Guard and police were going through neighborhoods telling people they had to get inside their homes, otherwise they shot paintballs at them, right? Kyle Rittenhouse, perfect example that sometimes you are going to need your firearm at times like this, right? So you're restricting the rights of people that are following the law, knowing damn well that the criminals that don't follow the law are going to break that law. They don't care about 870.044. Hell, they would never even know what the hell that even was. So in my opinion, very concerning. And I understand one side of it, where they say, oh, we need to get the situation under control as much as possible. You don't need to be in the streets, all of that kind of stuff. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you were just out there with them or looking for trouble. You could be coming home from work. You could have been out shopping and all of a sudden riots break out. These things happen very quickly. So who's to say that you didn't get caught in a bad situation? You have your firearm on you and something like this erupts, right? I don't know. I don't like the idea of any of these places being able to just kind of, with a stroke of a pen, restrict people's rights just like that. Mistake is a mistake. It was corrected. They apologized for it. But that 870.044, which I imagine pretty much every county, every state in the United States has, is equally concerning, because that's when you may need your firearm to protect yourself. So I tell you all this, and I'll leave you with one thing, and that is to remain vigilant. The GOA does a really good job. FPC, a lot of these organizations, I was about to say companies, but a lot of these organizations do a really great job in making sure that people's rights are protected and that people are held accountable. And of course, anytime something like this happens, I'll let you guys know my opinion on it as well. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. Also, I want to hear your opinion. If you've ever been affected by something like this, let me know down below. Big thanks to you guys. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.